Well, welcome to Speaking of Horses. I'm your host, Wayne Williams, and we're ready to go right here with some of the great stories from the horse industry. So join us as we get ready to go Speaking of Horses right here on this station. Well, hey, speaking of horses, we are here in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. We're at the Southern Equine Expo. Ty Evans is my guest, and Ty does a tremendous amount of work with mules. Mules is your forte.
Yes, sir.
So, well, first of all, how do you like being here in Tennessee at Southern Equine Expo?
It's been great. It's been raining a lot.
Oh, yeah, well, it didn't today. This morning the sun was out.
The sun came out.
I could not identify what that orange ball in the sky was.
Every time I come to this state, it rains on me, but no, I like it. This has been a good expo. A lot of interest in mules. For me, that's great.
Yeah.
It's been good attendance for sure.
It's been good attendance. This expo is growing every year.
Yeah.
Now, you're from Utah, right?
Yes, sir.
So, you got a lot of expos you're going to be doing this year?
This year, I had this expo, and then next weekend we're going to the Rocky Mountain Horse Expo in Denver. That's it for this year. I got a lot of regular clinics I do, my 3-day events that I do. I got about just about 40 of those this year, but this is it for the expo, just the two of them.
So tell us, I know you've been judging the trainer challenge here as well, and a lot of training similarities between mules and horses, but there are some differences. What's the major differences that you face in training a mule versus a horse?
A lot of it's just the time. I've learned you can get a lot done with a horse in a short amount of time, and you can do the same with mules, but for the most part it takes a little bit longer. It takes a little bit longer for them to process some things. And it's not that they're stubborn or dumb or anything like that. They're weighing all their options. One of my favorite quotes from Tom Dorrance was that it's not that the mules are stubborn. They're just giving you a chance to figure out what you're doing wrong. So I really like that.
That's a good statement, because I always related to, used to trail ride some with a gentleman that rode mules, and we were on horses. We come to a creek crossing or river crossing, and I don't care if it was 6 inches deep or a couple of feet deep where we were crossing. If you could see the bottom and the mule could see where he was placing his feet, he was going on. If he could not see where he was placing his feet, it was a slow, easy process as he felt his way. Where that mare I was riding would just kind of stumble in, trip. That's the difference. The horse would just go right on in and then trip over rocks on the bottom or whatever. And the mule took its time and knew what it was doing.
Yeah, mules are very logical. They just think things through. And for us humans, sometimes we could do a little bit better at that. But the mules always take that time and they think, and sometimes that gets in our way. At least that's our thought of it. But I've come to appreciate it. I'm glad they weigh the options.
Well, see, it kind of relates to, I remember talking years ago to a dressage instructor who was at an expo here in the States, and he had his ties back to classical riding in Europe. And somebody said, well, if I'm in the dressage program and I want to get to this level, I don't necessarily want this level. How can I, speed up the process to get here? And he says, always in America, you're in a hurry.
Yeah.
You're in a hurry. You can't get there without going through these steps. Otherwise, you will destroy everything that you're working for.
Yeah.
And he's right, and that's kind of what you just said. It's a process with a mule to learn it, to think it through so that it's in their brain. And if you try to hurry it or circumvent it, then you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, I agree. We're always in a hurry. But when people ask me, well, how long does it take to train a mule? How long you got? I mean, for me, I have pretty high standards, and so when I'm looking into finishing out a mule, for me it's a big process. It's a 5-6 year investment to get them to just one point that I would like to get them at.
It's like the old. I heard this years ago from actually Ray Hunt, who asked somebody how long, or what's the most thing you need, the main thing you need to train a horse, the main thing you need to train a horse. And everybody was thinking, I don't know. And And all of a sudden, when nobody could answer, he said, more time than the horse.
Yeah.
You just need a little more time than the horse.
Yeah.
So it's that time factor again. Don't get in a hurry. Just get to your destination.
Yeah.
And you know what? As I get older, I begin to realize that. When I'm younger, I don't realize that. I'm sorry they're testing mics in the background, but hey, Ty, it's been a pleasure to talk with you this morning.
Thank you.
And glad to see you here in Tennessee at this expo. It's a nice expo.
It is great.
And we will stay in touch, and we will see you down the road.
Okay. Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Stay with us here on Speaking of Horses. We're in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Hey, we at Speaking of Horses invite you to join us as we bring you many, many programs over the next few months, from retired racehorse makeover programs to horse rescue operations to therapeutic riding operations. Anything that benefits the horse, the rider, any discipline, any wonderful project. So we want you to join us right here on Speaking of Horses. We got some really good stuff coming up. And of course, you can always check out all of the other stuff we do, video as well, at speakingofhorses.com on our website. In the meantime, thanks for joining us here on this radio station. And we're going to bring you a lot more of Speaking of Horses. Well, right now here at the Southern Equine Expo, we're going to catch up with Heidi McLaughlin and a bit of Fearless Rider. Let's listen.
Is that true? We all have a story. Do you want to know how many times I hear them? All day long. I don't care about your story. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how you got here. It matters how you're dealing with it and how you're going to change it. How you're going to utilize the fact that this happened and how can I be better because of it. Not how can I relive it every day and go around and tell everybody, no, I got hurt. We all have gotten hurt. We've all been thrown. You have inherent risk every time you put your foot in the stirrup. That's just part of it. But why are you still doing it? Because you are so passionate about horses. You can't live without them. And you just want your joy back. So, right now, I give people permission to close the door on their fear story. I don't want you to talk about it anymore. I don't want you to talk to friends about it, family. I want you to erase all those x-rays if they're on your phone. And I want you to close the door on it and never discuss it again. That's it. It's over. It didn't happen. It happened, but it's over, and we're not going to keep talking about it, dwelling on it, and keeping it alive, and feeding it popcorn. We're going to move on. So, you know, one of the things I find interesting is that I did learn one of the reasons why that we are fearful is because we feel out of control. So if you feel out of control, it means you're not good at something. So if fear comes up, it's telling you you're not prepared for the situation that you're in. So even now, I could have something, and I've been working on being out of fear for, let's see, what is this, 2000? I think it's been a little over 10 years now, where I've just been able to finally build and become a better horsewoman and ride and ride and ride and learn and learn and learn and just get better and better and better. It's one of the most, you know, okay, so we're all really think that one of the greatest, best things we've ever did in our lives was maybe have a child and raise them, and that's very fulfilling. In my case, other than that, I think this is probably one of the greatest things I've ever done as far as all the things that have happened to me in my life that I'm sort of proud of, is that it was something I wanted so desperately, yet had no idea how to get to it. And I figured it out myself, and now I'm blessed to have the opportunity to share it with other people who have that same passion that I had and still have, that want nothing more than to be a good rider, to be confident, have joy again, to ride when they want to ride, canter when they want to canter, go camping when they want to camp, go show when they want to show. Whatever it is, it's no longer a limit. It's no longer there. And it's no longer excuses. Aren't we the best excuse makers ever? So, like I said, most people are so afraid of getting hurt. And I say, okay, So when fear comes up for me, I ask myself right there at that moment, what is it that I'm afraid of? Because that's going to tell me what I need to work on. If I'm afraid when I'm in the saddle, it's something that I'm not proficient at now. And that's what your fear is telling you. So now if it comes up and I feel it, I call it healthy fear now, because every now and then, we'll all get a little, whoa, what was that? And I call that healthy fear. But I also ask myself, okay, when that happened, what was it that I wasn't prepared for? How could I change it? How can I replicate it? Again, I think I mentioned yesterday, horses act up for two reasons, typically. There are exceptions to every rule, but it's either fear or pain. And so when my horse acts up and something happens, I try to figure that out. Like, what is it? And then if I have a bad experience and something happens on the trail, for those of you who are at the spooking clinic this morning, or de-spooking clinic, I talked about how when something happens on the trail and they do become really frightened, I try to replicate it. I try to figure out how, when I go home and I go into my own arena, how can I replicate what happened and help that horse get over it? And I use the techniques that I did this morning in the desensitizing, de-spooking clinic that I worked on. So this is the deal. It has to be, you have to be willing to go back to basics, and that's what I do in my clinics. I take you through a 3-day process. And it is a process because the first step leads to the next, leads to the next. I break down the exercises into non-threatening exercises that you're comfortable with. So the first day I'm not going to go, okay, get on and canter. I am going to get you to lead up to that, to where you start to see how much control you have over the horse. So when you start to see how much control you have over the horse, you start to realize that that's when your confidence starts to grow. Now, this isn't a quick fix. I wish I had a magic pill. I don't.
Well, that's it from the Southern Equine Expo. Join us next time on Speaking of Horses. Well, that's our show. I'm your host, Wayne Williams. Speaking of Horses, we'll be back next week with a brand new show. Or join us at speakingofhorses.com.